wider Latin American and Caribbean region. She holds several degrees in economics and world trade, among others. Then we will have Mr. Ricardo Ortiz. He's the CEO of Logity. Ricardo is the co-founder of this company. He holds a master's degree in enterprise creation and entrepreneurship and has experience in software development and product design. He also has earned his acceptance into acceleration programs such as Google, Everest, and Delta X. Third, we will have Mr. Mike Malito. He's the project coordination lead of the Americas of the Hudson Analytics company. He serves as the project lead of this company in the Americas, a global maritime risk management firm. He supports also the firm's cybersecurity and digitalization practices and facilitates the firm and the engagement of across Latin America. He holds a master's degree in international relations and sustainability development. Then we have my fellow countryman, Pablo Owen. He's the Vice President of Latin America, Caribbean, and North America of HPC. He's a senior executive with more than 30 years of experience leading through logistics, supply chain, shipping, ports, moving services, heavy equipment, machinery, fast-moving consumer, among other things. And at the end, and not least, we will have Mr. Thomas Damsgaard. He's the head of Americas of PIMCO. He started an exciting shipping career in 1990 and has earned his stripes in succession of increasingly challenging roles with senior management and leadership for maritime market leaders. He holds an MBA in shipping and logistics from Copenhagen Business School. So, Krista, please. Start.
Buenos días. Voy a hablar en inglés, pero claro que si ustedes tienen preguntas en español no hay problema. I'll switch to English. Many thanks to the organizers for inviting the IDB here. It's our second year. So first, for those of you who are not familiar with the IDB group, we are three arms. We're the IDB, where we provide loans, grants, technical assistance to governments, and we have some focus areas under our new presidency, which include food security, climate change, mitigation, adaptation, sustainable digital and physical infrastructure with emphasis on regional integration, as well as poverty and inequality, and health and education. Those are the 6 priorities of the IDB. The IDB Lab, which is our innovation laboratory, where they have grants for startups, but we work primarily to create the innovation ecosystem, so working with the governments or with universities or think tanks, as opposed to working directly with firms. And with firms, we work directly with them through IDB Invest. So they have the same commitment to development challenges, but the focus is on the private sector, and they invest in areas such as clean energy, modernization of agriculture, strengthening transportation systems, and expanding access to financing. I work within the integration and trade sector, and we have about $2.3 billion in the region, primarily in areas related to trade facilitation and logistics. We also work in export promotion and investment attraction, in trade agreements and institutional strengthening, as well as business forums and networks. So, to the topic at hand today, all of you, obviously, who are in the business know that trade costs continue to be a limit to growth in international trade in Latin America and the Caribbean. There's still a lot of administrative delays and bottlenecks with border agencies, customs, ports, etc. And that trade facilitation continues to be a mechanism to reduce those trade costs. And so now, from the IDB side, our goal is to really create that cooperation and coordination between the countries in order to maximize those gains. And so in that sense, we're working to support through investment and through technical assistance, trade single windows for administrative processes related to import and export, maritime single windows for those processes related to ship arrival, ship departure, and green and digital maritime corridors. Those are the three primary areas that I'm going to talk about today. So first, at the national level, through our investment lending, we have been supporting the modernization of national trade single windows. Things like process re-engineering, better client interfaces, additional services, so looking at specific gateways or platforms for small and medium-sized enterprises, restricted goods modules, electronic transactions, e-payments, upgrades to the software. So we're really looking at taking the traditional single window, which might just have been for exports or imports, and really trying to build it out, modernize it, digitalize it. The second thing we're looking at the national level is that national interconnectivity. So connections to core community systems, which we are financing as well in several countries, as well as connections to maritime single windows, and that interconnectivity between the various platforms to allow for the seamless arrival and clearance of cargo in the countries. And then we're looking at ways in which we can facilitate better e-commerce. So there's a great example in Chile, where Chile Customs, CSEX, which is the trade single window, and Chile Mail are all working together to facilitate air cargo. And then they're also looking at future integration with Treasury. So basically trying to see how we can facilitate better small packages. And then the last one is on regional interoperability. So in this sense, we're working on interoperating trade single windows. And why do we want to do that? Because you have better agility, improved risk management, and I'll speak to that in a minute. When you exchange data and information between the exporting country and the importing country, then you're able to increase the security in the logistics chain. You can promote regional and global value chains. And of course, you can also promote the adoption of international standards. So an example from what we've been doing for the last almost 10 years is working with the Pacific Alliance group of countries. Pacific Alliance is a regional integration agreement between Chile, Colombia, Mexico, and Peru. And one of the initiatives in this under this agreement is the interconnection of the trade single window. So so they have been exchanging for the past couple of years. After harmonizing their certificates of origin, phytosanitary certificates, and now their customs declarations, they're actually exchanging that information from national single window through a kind of a translation mechanism to another national single window, and that allows for pre-arrival clearance. So that's how it's had an impact on improving risk management, because now you're able to increase the information and data that you have to create the risk profiles, and then to do the pre-arrival clearance on the goods. So it works basically in a kind of point-to-point connection model, which I'll say in a minute is not ideal and is not scalable, right? Because it works that you have a single window from Mexico that has like an interoperability pack that translates their data to another interoperability pack in Colombia, for example, that then translates it to the national single window. So each time you add a country, or each time you add a service or data that you want to exchange, you need to harmonize that data. You need to negotiate what the fields are, what the data is that you're going to collect, and then it's done point to point. And that was because there really isn't an institutional body for the Pacific Alliance. In fact, the bank is the secretariat for the Pacific Alliance, and therefore who hosts it, who governs it, who pays for it, really became the issue at hand in 2016, and that's why it was done point to point. That said, the constraint to scalability, right? However, there have been some positive impacts from exchanging that data on phytosanitary certificates, on certificates of origin, and now soon on customs declaration, is that we've seen an increase in exports of 30%, and you've seen a reduction in physical inspections by 30%. So that translates to savings for governments and firms. So on the issue of scalability, because as I mentioned, the governance is unclear, there's no plan, so basically it requires significant time and resources. So the next plan looks like this. And this is much more familiar to many of you, I'm sure, where you really have like a central validator, right? A central node that effectively connects the various single windows. So that allows us to then add new forms, exchange new data. It allows this platform to communicate with other platforms, like a PCS, like the IPPC hub, you know, for eFIDO. Again, one of the challenges that we're seeing is going to be, again, the governance structure and how you maintain and sustain this new platform. And then I'll speak lastly on two other initiatives that we have for interconnectivity, for regional integration. And this is a lot more familiar, and this architecture, and in line with what we're moving towards for the trade single windows, is really a regional maritime single window in the Caribbean. And so, as many of you will know, the MSW is a single point of entry for the submission of documents between vessels and the maritime authorities. So the idea with the regional maritime single window in those countries where you have, ports of call, by the same shipping line, it makes a lot of sense to exchange, to send that information once, rather than have to send that information to each port. Right now, it's limited to just those standardized and harmonized ship reporting formalities, right? So one of the challenges under the Pacific Alliance is that these were not, they didn't exist. They don't exist harmonized or standardized reporting. So that all had to be agreed, negotiated. That took a lot of time. Here, we already have it. And you can extend the scope to include other services. And the last slide, something that we're looking at working on, and something that we had some good conversations with PIMCO on, is the green and digital maritime corridors. So many of you will know the corridor between Rotterdam and Singapore, and the agreement that they've made to exchange data, particular on port and vessel information, such as arrival and departure timing, using international standards. And the idea, of course, is that to reduce the emissions along that corridor, thereby aiming to reach the net zero emissions in 2050. So as part of the data, the digital aspect, it would be the exchange of electronic bills of lading, certificates of origin, SPS certificates, just-in-time planning, coordination. And what's interesting about that is a little bit of that mix of logistics systems and the administrative systems. And that's kind of that type of interoperability that we're looking to promote ourselves. So two of the ideas that we've been working with recently is looking at this hub and spoke in a region like the Caribbean, where you might have a hub like Jamaica with CMA CGM there, and you might have a feeder country like Barbados, and you could effectively share the information on advanced vessel and cargo, and that would allow for the pre-clearance and would also allow for better operational planning at both ports, right? And then in Chile and Peru, we're looking at the interoperability of the maritime single windows, again, to provide port clearance data, ETA, ETD, vessel draft, etc. So that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for listening.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. I'm gonna talk about an interesting topic. Actually, it's from the upcoming generative AI interoperability. So, as you know, we have these large language models actually running across diverse solutions in logistics. But I'm going to start with the new opportunities to come. So actually, this is focused in Latin America. First, we have a new geopolitical strategy in Asia with Asia. So the United States changed the manufacturing process, and also we have nowadays investment in Mexico and Latin America to change the manufacturers and all the factories to work in automotive industry and so on. So in the second point, you could check this, we have BC's firms. What is BC? BC is venture capital. That includes corporate venture capital. So those portfolios are investing right now in companies, startups that have solutions, of different solutions to interoperability and logistics as well. Third point that I'm going to touch today is generative AI and frameworks. You know, before of ChatGPT, nowadays we have this. It's easy to use a framework from Google, from Microsoft. If you have data to train, you will use these large language models today. So, what happened? I don't know if you heard about this phenomenon called friend or nearshoring. And this nearshoring is a practice of outsourcing business processes, okay, services to companies in nearby countries to reduce costs and enhance operational efficiency. So that happened actually in the USA. So what the post-pandemic effect is that we understood that something happened around the world, like COVID-19. So the supply chain could stop, and it's actually a huge damage for our economy. So nearshoring is happening. Also the manufacturers, industry, the partners, the stakeholders near from the United States. So that actually, we are talking about only in Mexico, part of Latin America, we have talking about $150 billion for Asia. This 110K million is only the investment that are already working in Mexico with all the new factories across Mexico territory. So that's the thing that the geopolitical stuff is happening right now. So I've been talking with a friend, Brian Long. Brian Long is a founder, BC founder, fashion BC founder, and I spoke with him about the supply chain and what he thinks about the supply chain. And it's a quote, interesting quote. So supply chain starts in the smallest places and everything is connected. So what happened if we didn't have, talking about Latin America, if we didn't have just infrastructure, I'm in comparison with China. China has a lot of infrastructure, and also, all the manufacturers, from the people who works in the fields to the factories, they are already connected. But in Latin America, we need to put an extra effort to have this, or have the same supply chain interconnection. So we have three interesting stakeholders here. First, venture capital. As you know, Y Combinator, the most successful accelerator in the United States. They actually have a new batch. All the batch for those startups use artificial or create artificial intelligence. So, and there's another venture capital like OBP, Dila Capital, who is for the United States, that they already investing in AI-based startups. Why is this? Because first time in human story, we have this possibility to use artificial intelligence in an easy way. The second thing that we have that is important is we have Google and Microsoft My Google launched in the last month, Vertex AI. Vertex AI is a simple way to use artificial intelligence. So you could check all the documentation and you could run your own artificial intelligence in your company. And also they are doing my amazing strategy. They give credits to practice and you can learn and train your data. That's quite important because for all the companies who works without logistics, it's better and they could compete with huge companies right now. So that's the most interesting part of talking about the supply chain startup solution story. And Microsoft, actually, those guys pull out. They are doing the Dynamic 365 solution. They are refixing or refurbishing that service because they are planning to have a data enrichment. They are with third parties and all the people who work with Dynamic 365. They are planning to have an harmonized data, and that's important because that's a perfect example that Microsoft will be in the industry of AI, maybe better than Google, but well, we'll see, right? So the result of those guys have been pushing this interesting strategy towards artificial intelligence is automation. All the companies actually offer two things, and that's, I don't know if the most valuable things, but it's awesome how automation, artificial intelligence, and these new models, models to train data, could offer automation. So we have more than 100 companies right now in Latin America working with automation that happened before to have artificial intelligence and data. That's interesting. So it was a short talk, but if you have questions, I can wait for you. Thank you so much.
For the ones that just arrived, we will be discussing after the talks among all of us. So we will be answering questions from the audience, the speakers. So it will be a fluid conversation. Así que vamos a conversar después de las presentaciones. Así que no se preocupen si tienen preguntas, las vamos a hacer al final y vamos a conversar entre todos y discutir el tema.
Good morning, everybody. Let's start off by thanking everyone who made this event possible. This is actually my first TOC conference, so it's been really exciting. It seems like a very tight-knit community here, and I look forward to meeting more of you today. For those who do not yet know me, my name is Mike Lito, and I serve as the Americas Project Coordination Lead for a company called Hudson Analytics. And today I'm going to be speaking to you about the human factor behind port digital transformation. This week, we've all had the opportunity to learn a lot more about smart port technologies. And it seems that everywhere we look, new technology is continuing to drive us forward towards faster efficiency, towards environmental sustainability, and towards competition, both with countries and throughout entire regions. And all of us here understand today that no two ports are quite the same. Each has its own variety of stakeholders, which must come together to ultimately decide how often and when digital transformation occurs. And so what this means is that it poses a lot of unique challenges to each and every port community. For some, digital transformation can mean the reduction of paper or the introduction of new applications to improve organizational processes. For others, like we're talking about today, we're talking about interoperability through digital platforms, through maritime single windows, PCS systems, and other operations technologies. So regardless of where a port is today, the one factor that brings us all together is the factor of human beings. Because no technology, no port no port, regardless of where we are technologically, can operate fully independent of people. So to start things off today, I'm going to just run through a quick agenda. I am briefly going to discuss or go over my company and what we do, Hudson Analytics. And then we're going to talk about the work that we do regarding port digital transformation. I'm then going to go over stakeholder engagement strategies and a concept of change management, and why we can't just approach these projects as just an IT division or just an operations division, but as a change management initiative. We'll then talk about the evolving role of cyber risk management as a shared responsibility, and then wrap up by reviewing a case study. So, before we begin, I am going to talk a little bit about Hudson Analytics and the work that we do and how it drives forward this human factor, emphasizes this human factor within the digital transformation. So, Hudson Analytics is a strategic global port and maritime risk advisory firm. We work on large-scale digital transformation projects that focus on enhancing trade and enhancing operations across port communities and across regions. And this can range from everything that's more technical, like ICT, operations, cyber and physical security, to components like regulatory preparedness, governance, and environmental sustainability. We've been in business nearly 40 years and currently are headquartered in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in the United States. And we have presence in 11 different offices across 4 continents. While our company works all over the world, our cross-functional team specifically focuses on the Latin America and Caribbean region as it relates to digital advancement. The overall goal is first and foremost to work with people to ensure that technology can meet them where they are. Because without proper adoption, we cannot hope that technology is going to truly enact transformation. And this is very important to talk about today. As you can see from the graphic, we've taken on several different projects throughout the course of the past several years. And all of them, regardless of the size or scope, has included this element of human factor. So next we'll talk about the strategy of change management, but just to give you a few examples of some of the work that we do, some of the projects that I'm currently involved with on a daily basis include the ongoing digital transformation of the port community in Honduras, and the strategic advisory towards the establishment of electronic single window for trade in Belize. So at its root, change management is the bridge that connects leaders, programs, and people to solution. We now live in a world where we can no longer call technology projects something that's just in the IT department, as I mentioned earlier. And if anything, technology transformation has actually become more human instead of less. The port and maritime industry is a perfect example of such transformation. Because of all the areas where we need to drive operational efficiency and competitive advantage, it is more important than ever before to make sure that these users are adopting these systems and find value in these shared platforms. And as Krista mentioned, as we continue to scale, this is only going to become more and more important. This conference is also a testament to this progress. 10, 20 years ago, we were talking about whether or not we should introduce technologies into certain areas. But now we're talking about which technologies we should introduce into our environments. It's no longer an option in order to remain competitive. And as such, we need to make sure that these types of projects, especially at scale, are going to meet these goals. As you can see from the graphic on the top right, not many projects, especially as they grow in scale, meet initial objectives for cost, time, or utilization. And this is largely because it is so critical to really focus on that planning to anticipate when unexpected changes occur. So by using change management, we can begin to orient people for future transformative growth. And if we really hope to harness the full capabilities of a PCS or maritime single window, for example, we have to put up front the needs, expectations, and goals of all potential end users. The more we can plan, the more we can anticipate these types of challenges, like I mentioned, cost, time, utilization, which can become very hard to achieve, especially when some of these projects can last a decade or more. So when it comes to early engagement, the concept of change management in practice is ultimately securing workforce transformation and ensuring that it happens alongside digital transformation. Automation, AI, and data-driven decision-making are all elements of technology that are meant to complement human ingenuity rather than replace it. But in order for this to happen, we must work in ways that are transparent, collaborative, and through coordination in order to establish a solid foundation on which to build these projects. Starting first with transparency, the exchanging of ideas and the plans for future initiatives can help to set that foundation. At this point in history, like I mentioned, it's not a matter of whether or not we adopt technology, but which technology we choose to adopt. As a result, all different organizations within the core community are talking about technology, and more transparency, initiating these conversations and helping to facilitate it can help set that foundation for future interoperability. Next comes collaboration, and this is often the most important but also the most difficult part because it involves level setting across all potential users of a shared community system. When it comes to collaboration, the introduction of new technology can be the real difference maker between the competitive future for many ports. And so as a result, fostering dialogue between stakeholders is hugely important. This includes the use of global best practices, international guidelines, and organizational requirements at the global level. But also, to help facilitate this, something that Hudson Analytics works to do is act as a neutral third party, impartial, to help kind of center some of these discussions. And next comes collaboration. The establishment of things like steering committees can help propel the project forward and anticipate problems or potential bumps in the road as we continue to develop these types of systems. And the idea here as well is to create a sort of implementation plan so that we can establish quick wins, gain momentum, and continue to ride that wave all the way through to the end of the project. So next we're going to talk a little bit about cyber risk management. We can't hope to move towards these shared systems and enable interoperability without also talking about the shared risk that's associated with these types of projects. It's built on the cornerstone of trust and mutual understanding that there is shared risk involved with exchanging critical data and information. So while at a glance cybersecurity might not seem human, it is something that is deeply human.
Super.
Starting with cyber risk capabilities assessments. So this is a low cost and relatively quick way to establish a baseline for both organizations and core communities regarding what their cybersecurity maturity is. This then allows for organizations to understand where potential vulnerabilities are and prepare further for digital transformation and interoperability. Next comes building a culture. If we're hoping to use these systems together, it's built on that cornerstone of shared trust. And so digital interoperability is enabled by allowing us to create this culture of cyber risk management to protect the critical information that we're sharing that can make or break our competitive advantage across entire regions. And next comes managing risk. Similar to a steering committee or working groups, there are groups as well that can be developed within the form of cyber risk committees or task management forces that allow for the facilitation of this implementation over time and can ensure that risk is mitigated or outright prevented. So the last thing I'm going to go over is a case study that we did with the Organization of American States and Barbados Port Incorporated, taking a lot of these concepts and practically applying them. So starting in 2021, we set out to perform a PCS feasibility study with Barbados Port Incorporated for the establishment of this platform across their port community. And this included meeting with a variety of different stakeholder groups. It actually was in the midst of the pandemic, so many of the early meetings were virtual, but once we were able to get there in person and facilitate some of these workshops and meet with stakeholders and understand what their needs and values were and what they'd like to see out of the shared system, we were able to bridge between global best practices and what's going to be most applicable and relevant to Barbados. We also performed a cyber risk assessment. Hudson Analytics actually has a cyber risk assessment platform called PortLogix, where we established a baseline and ultimately culminated in the establishment of a cybersecurity risk committee. And as you can see from the bottom right-hand part of the screen, that is my counterpart, colleague Andrew Baskin, receiving an award for cybersecurity excellence in Roatan with our friends at BPI. So just to finish out with some closing thoughts, I know, like I mentioned, every other day it seems technology is continuing to develop and drive us forward, but we also must understand that this brings implications of IT, security, and workforce transformation. Because no port can operate fully individually of people, no matter how advanced it is, human factor will continue to remain a relevant and essential element of every one of these projects. And here's my contact info. That's all I have.
Ok, buenos días. Yo voy a tomar la oportunidad de hablar en español o en castellano. ¿Hay alguien que no entienda castellano? Ok. Mi nombre es Pablo Bowen. Yo soy vicepresidente para Américas. Eso incluye desde Canadá hasta Chile, de Hamburg Port Consulting, HPC. Somos una compañía, una consultora que está basada en la ciudad de Hamburgo. Si bien no tenemos oficinas alrededor del mundo, nos dedicamos a hacer proyectos alrededor del mundo como consultora en logística. Y escuchando a mis colegas las presentaciones previas de lo que están exponiendo, yo voy a hacer énfasis en algunos puntos que se han planteado también. Y más que nada, quiero compartir con ustedes 2 o 3 puntos que nosotros vemos que están sucediendo en la industria. Nosotros tenemos el privilegio de contactar muchos clientes y hablar con muchos interlocutores de la industria donde nos movemos, logística, la industria de puertos, y vemos algunas tendencias claras. Y no solamente algunas tendencias claras, sino que además quiero compartir con ustedes la implementación de esas tendencias, porque está bien cuando se habla hablamos en teoría de cosas que vienen a futuro, que nos tenemos que preocupar, etcétera, pero ¿qué está pasando en el mercado? ¿Cómo se están aterrizando, conectando a tierra, por así decirlo, esos puntos en particular? Y eso es lo que quiero, ojalá pueda compartirlo en forma clara. Si bien es cierto, voy a ocupar una serie de láminas que están desarrolladas solamente en PowerPoint. Bueno, vamos adelante. Lo primero, yo en el año 2001 tuve la oportunidad de estar en Stanford, en la universidad, y me acuerdo un profesor que hablaba del bullwhip, cuando hablaba de la supply chain. Y el bullwhip no era más que un látigo, ¿cierto? Que uno hace un movimiento y la punta del látigo llegaba a sobre 120 kilómetros por hora, la velocidad de la punta. Ese concepto es un concepto básico de supply chain, y con tantas cosas que nos han sucedido, pandemia, restricciones, bloqueos en algunos canales, escasez de agua aquí en casa, que está afectando el canal de Panamá, y tantas otras que nos van a suceder adelante, como que perdemos de vista las cosas básicas que nos están sucediendo. El bullwhip no es otra cosa de que cualquier interferencia en nuestra supply chain, independiente que sea near shoring, más lejos, más cerca, etc., los efectos son multiplicadores, primero que todo. Segundo, que la resiliencia en la supply chain tiene que ser enorme. Nosotros estábamos acostumbrados en los últimos años a que nuestra supply chain fuera relativamente estable, porque no habíamos tenido algún evento más dramático que produjera esta suerte de bullwhip. Y eso no tenemos que perderlo de vista. Nosotros lo que estamos tratando de ver es, primero que todo, tener resiliencia, y segundo, algo tan básico como visibilidad. Nosotros hicimos un proyecto hace poco tiempo atrás en Tailandia en relación a la implementación de un PCS. Y en una de las tantas reuniones con todos los stakeholders, era un auditorio como este, de una cantidad de gente como lo que estamos ahora, todos discutiendo qué es lo que teníamos que ver y cuál era la prioridad, etc. De repente una persona bien mayor se levantó y dijo: un momento. Yo lo que quiero saber es dónde está mi container. Y eso fue un balde de agua fría para todos, porque todos estábamos hablando de otras cosas, ¿no? Bastante más evolucionadas, técnicas, etc. Pero en realidad él nos aterrizó. El primer problema que tenían que resolver era dónde estaban los containers. Así de básico. Entonces, el primer punto que quiero compartir con ustedes es que no perdamos la conexión a tierra de los temas básicos. La supply chain tiene que tener visibilidad, full resiliencia y de la A a la Z. No sacamos nada porque en una parte de la supply chain seamos tremendamente efectivos si en el last mile nos quedamos, no llegamos. Simplemente no llegamos. ¿Es la solución que una sola compañía se haga dueña de la extended supply chain? No lo creo, esa es mi opinión personal. Es muy complejo hacerlo así. ¿Es la solución tener una visibilidad completa de la supply chain independiente con los distintos actores? Eso es mucho más factible. Bueno, ese es un primer punto que quería compartir con ustedes. Seguimos con el concepto de Global Supply Chain. Whatever is happening entre Estados Unidos y China, Global Supply Chain está aquí para quedarse, independiente de dónde venga de México, venga de China, venga de Vietnam. Tenemos que hacer frente a este tema. El segundo tema, o segundo tópico que tiene que ver con esto, y ya lo comentaban, ¿cierto? La comunicación, el exchange data. Nosotros en el puerto de Hamburgo estamos conectados con el puerto de Rotterdam y no lo estábamos antes, pero estamos conectados hoy día con el puerto de Rotterdam. Entonces un buque que viene atrasado a Rotterdam y que el next port es Hamburgo, nosotros ya sabemos en forma real time ese retraso. ¿Y cuál es el impacto? Primero, que visibilidad, lo sabemos. Segundo, que nos permite estimar ese retraso, la nueva hora de llegada a Hamburgo, porque va a parar en Rotterdam, etc. Y con el ETD también vamos a saber cuándo sale. Y cuando salga, le podemos decir al buque, y le decimos al buque, miren, esta es la mejor velocidad que usted puede llevar. Para dos cosas, para ahorrar combustible, disminuir CO2 emissions y al mismo tiempo para llegar en el mejor momento a la entrada del Elba y bajar transitar por el Elba hasta donde está el puerto de Hamburgo. Ahora, con esa información no basta con saberla, sino que hay que tener acceso a todos los demás stakeholders. Entonces, todo el puerto de Hamburgo, todos los stakeholders del puerto de Hamburgo tienen acceso a esa información porque hay una plataforma común que se hace el sharing de esa data. Y al tener ese sharing de data, lo que se hace es reprogramar operaciones, seteo de los puertos, movimientos de remolcadores. O sea, tiene un efecto multiplicador de productividad enorme. Lamentablemente todavía hay compañías que piensan que no tienen que compartir datos, compartir información, que todo es estratégico. Saber de que a qué hora va a llegar el buque, algunas compañías la piensan desde la altura que sigue siendo estratégico. No se trata de compartir toda la data de información de empresa, pero el compartir datos nos permite, y esto es lo que nos está pasando en el mundo. O sea, de una u otra forma, todos los centros se están comunicando, se están compartiendo data, y eso nos hace más resilientes, más fuertes para las embestidas que sí o sí vamos a seguir teniendo desde el punto de vista logístico. Entonces, este es un segundo tema. ¿Cómo puede ser, y no es una crítica, porque yo he participado también en este tema, cómo puede ser que un país como Brasil todavía no tenga puerto multisystem? UK puso fondos para hacer un estudio con ellos. Nosotros participamos de ese proyecto y finalmente no se pudo ejecutar la etapa 2 por falta de fondos, etcétera, por otros motivos. Pero hasta la fecha no hay Core Community System en Brasil. Cuando hablamos de Core Community System estamos hablando precisamente de una de las plataformas que se ocupan hoy día para intercambiar información. Y un Core Community System para una comunidad portuaria. ¿Para qué decir si estamos hablando de Brasil como un todo? Y ocupo Brasil porque nosotros trabajamos con ellos, hablamos del governance, hablamos de cuáles eran las mejores opciones que tenían para organizarse, incluso hicimos el business case para el puerto de Santos y el business case para un segundo puerto. Se pagaban 18 meses. En la inversión que había que hacer, con una estructura de precios, etcétera, se pagaban 18 meses. Un Core Community System para el puerto de Santos. El puerto de Santos todavía no tiene un Core Community System. Y producto de eso, sigue pensando dentro de su frontera y se está discutiendo, y ojalá en el futuro próximo, muy próximo, veamos que estas iniciativas se lleven a cabo, no solamente en Brasil, sino que en otros lugares, como está sucediendo en Latinoamérica, como lo presentaban recién. Este es otro tema que vemos con bastante seguido, es el cambio de roles. Por ejemplo, las port authorities, las autoridades portuarias. Las autoridades portuarias, que el tema de que son más privadas, son menos privadas, son más públicas, menos públicas, y dependiendo del gobierno van cambiando, etc. ¿Cuál es el mejor modelo para una autoridad portuaria? ¿Y hasta dónde debe llegar una autoridad portuaria? Vean Europa. En Europa tenemos de todo. Tenemos desde privados hasta públicos. El puerto de Rotterdam, el puerto de Ámsterdam y el puerto de Rotterdam. Eran dos puertos separados y los dos decidieron hacer Core Community System o PCS independiente. A poco andar se dieron cuenta de que habían cometido una imprudencia y hoy día decidieron juntarse y hacer uno solo. Hoy día operan como uno solo. ¿Quiénes lo gobiernan? ¿Quiénes lo manejan? Las autoridades portuarias, definitivamente. Puerto de Hamburgo, hace ya más de 30 años, fueron los privados, entre ellos la casa matriz de nosotros, son dueños del Core Community System y se formó una empresa privada para operar el tema. Entonces, el tema no está ahí, el tema hay que resolverlo y hay que resolverlo de acuerdo a los gobiernos, de acuerdo al pensamiento y la cultura del país en particular, etc. Hay muchas cosas que se pueden resolver, pero lo que les quiero compartir con ustedes es que lo que vemos es un cambio de rol dramático en la autoridad portuaria, que es pasar a ser, nosotros le denominamos digital role. O sea, hay una oportunidad de mejorar el rol y no quedarse como rental y no quedarse solamente recibiendo lo que se hizo en la concesión. En la mayoría de los casos nuestros aquí en la región, muchas de las concesiones ya van caminando a los 25 o 30 años. Entonces se hicieron con hace 20, 25 años criterios, ¿cierto?, que hoy día pueden ser muy diferentes. Entonces esos son lo que vemos es y cómo se puede hacer proveyendo plataformas digitales comunes, recolectando los datos y compartiéndolos, porque se necesita un tercero que sea un tercero imparcial, un tercero que sea confiable para el manejo de esa data que se está compartiendo. Y bueno, y en general lo que hemos visto, y esto los traje de uno de los proyectos que hemos participado, si te transformas en digital role, las revenues son muchísimo mayores que ser solamente como landlord. Un tercer punto tiene que ver con la productividad. Me van a perdonar por este enredo que tengo aquí en esta lámina, pero lo que estamos tratando de mostrar acá es que cada empresa tiene su curva de productividad y curva de productividad asociada a los proyectos que realiza. Mientras más avanza y más productivo empieza a ser una compañía, ¿cierto? Los nuevos proyectos son cada vez más caros para ganar menor productividad. Ese es un hecho de la causa, como dicen los abogados. Bueno, el sharing data está demostrado, y lo podemos demostrar con números, con casos reales, que es un salto de uno salta, le da la oportunidad a la compañía de saltar a otra curva de productividad. Porque yo sé que en mi comunidad hay datos que los stakeholders tienen, varios de los stakeholders tienen, que me interesan a mí y que me agregan valor. Entonces, en el momento que nos ponemos de acuerdo y compartimos datos, lo que hacemos es agregar valor a la compañía y agregar un valor que me permite aumentar mi productividad en general, los KPI que se estén manejando por ese concepto. Son casos reales, ¿no? Bueno, casos, y yendo a cosas más concretas, el PCS, Share, No Net to Get, es el básico, ¿cierto? Es un ejemplo. En el caso de Hamburgo, uno ve la parte técnica, concuerdo plenamente con lo que se planteaba respecto al tema de las personas. Estos proyectos no van allá del 30% tecnología y el 70-75% son procesos, son cambios organizacionales, es el governance. O sea, hay comentarios que se están estudiando ciertas iniciativas y de cómo conectarse y tener plataformas comunes y no estar conectado un sistema con otro sistema, como aquí en la región. Bueno, en Europa, nuestro buque que venía a Rotterdam tiene que hacer los National Single Windows de Rotterdam, del país de Netherlands, ¿cierto? Y después tiene que hacer el National Single Windows de Alemania. Bueno, hay proyectos en ejecución en este momento que se habla de European Single Window, un solo Single Window. Por mucho que esté conectado al Single Window de cada país, hoy día son requerimientos que no son exactamente los mismos, los formatos, la data, etc. El otro ejemplo concreto donde están operando, nosotros fuimos partícipes de este proyecto, también en el RIC, y lo interesante de esto es que ponerse de acuerdo primero entre países de la Unión Europea, ya ese es un desafío. Pero segundo y mayor desafío era ponerse de acuerdo también en ese mismo grupo con Suiza. Bueno, todos esos países eran nueve distintos puertos de distintas nacionalidades. Y se trabajó y se desarrolló un PCS específico para todo el tema, la temática del RIM de esa zona en particular. Con toda la complejidad de distintas regulaciones, customs de aduana, etc. Otro caso concreto es el HBCC, que llamamos Hamburg Vessel Coordination Center. Este caso es el centro neurálgico del puerto de Hamburgo. Recibe información y entrega información y deja disponible información para los stakeholders en todo lo que es la operación propiamente tal. Ayuda a definir quién puede entrar, quién puede salir, dependiendo de las mareas, dependiendo del tráfico, etc. La coordinación con los remolcadores, la coordinación con las lanchas de pailo. Todo este tema se maneja aquí en Hamburg Vessel Coordination Center. 7x24 clientes. ¿Quiénes son? De nuevo, es una empresa privada. Nos pusimos de acuerdo los competidores, incluso todos del puerto de Hamburgo. Creamos esta empresa privada y operamos de esta manera. Ya llevamos años operando en este sistema. Finalmente, se habla mucho de tecnología y hablamos mucho de tecnología, pero esta tecnología tiene que hacernos sentido y no perder de base las cosas básicas. Suena redundante, pero no nos tenemos que olvidar de que la tecnología la tenemos que usar para cosas bastante específicas y orientadas y alineadas con nuestros objetivos de negocio hacia adelante. La excelencia, las operaciones portuarias, sostenibilidad, que es un tema que ha crecido en términos de requerimiento y de discusión enormemente, y por último los modelos de negocio. Pero a la larga lo que hay que decir que tenemos que pensar con Smart Port, el concepto que de qué manera de esta cantidad de tecnología hoy día y oportunidades me puedo hacer rápidamente, la puedo ocupar rápidamente en mi operación para hacer y moverme hacia un Smart Port. Bueno, eso es lo que quería y feliz de responder preguntas o comentar. Esta es mi presentación.
Good morning, everyone. It's truly exciting to be with you here for a couple of days. And I have to say, I'm incredibly proud of our industry, the conversation, the dialogues we've had in this room here over the last couple of days, how we're not like also just sticking our heads in the sand, hoping that the changes that we're seeing are going to go away. We're actually all leaning into it and coming at it from a problem-solution standpoint. And it's really inspiring. I've taken a lot of notes, I've learned a lot from everybody over the last couple of days, and I think it's really important when we walk out of here to continue these dialogues. We use these connectivities that we have created here, these relationships, to keep moving fast and keep moving fast forward with urgency. We're going to be talking about the state of the industry and the digital resilience within maritime this morning. The year 2020 has been described in a report by the UN as a moment that changed everything. And I'm sure you will all agree with me that it is true in so many ways. The report, however, was specifically talking about e-commerce and the digital sectors. In 2020, digitalization saw an unprecedented advancement, which was fueled by the worldwide lockdown because of the pandemic. In China alone, online retail sales rose from 19 to 24% from August 19 to August 2020. And downloads for shopping apps jumped 60% in just 1 week in 2020. That was during March when the pandemic hit. There, in the middle of this economic slowdown, as many of us retreated back into our homes and the world seemed to be heading towards a total standstill, the pandemic actually fueled a surge in digital transformation, triggering a digital turning point. This turning point will have a lasting impact on our societies and the ways that we are doing business. Similarly, a McKinsey study, a survey of executives, has actually found that companies during the pandemic accelerated digitalization of their customer and their supply chains and the interactions by 3 to 4 years just within a few months. The study also found that the share of digital-enabled products in their portfolios accelerated by 7 years in those same few months. The year 2020 demanded an unprecedented urgency to speed up digital transition worldwide and across our industries. And our shipping industry was not exempt from this. Shipping inspections were carried out remotely, and the uptake in the use of electronic bills of lading rose, to mention just a few examples. This was in big part driven by the pandemic, but certainly also by a level of urgency to continue to stay relevant. Today, the COVID pandemic is behind us. Us being together here in the room is an illustration of that, and a testament to that. However, today we also have another urgency. And this is what is going to be speeding up our decisions, our digitalization, and our intelligent solutions. This urgency is the decarbonization. BIMCO, we are the world's largest maritime organization, representing about 63% of the world's fleet. We have 3 overall goals. We are supporting a level playing field in shipping, which is a key driver for the lobbying and the regulatory efforts we are putting into both the IMO and the EU on maritime affairs, but also the UN when it comes to sanctions. Secondly, we seek opportunities to standardize and harmonize. And as we have learned in the earlier presentations today, standardized data sets are key in order to drive the interoperability. Standardization also is on our contracts and clauses, which is the keystone BIMCO. And it is on working with cybersecurity on standardized terms, hull cleaning standards, and software maintenance programs for our ships, just to name a few. Thirdly, we are safeguarding our members' business, and we do this by providing numerous tools and the support and advice to the industry as a whole. At BIMCO, we are aligned with the maritime and industry decarbonization journey that we are currently on. Speeding up the right decisions, improving the efficiency of our fleets, embrace intelligent solutions, and adopting the digital solutions that are available right now in front of us, ready to use. Digitalization and efficiency and intelligent solutions can help our industry cut emissions. Making the right decisions can help us cut emissions. Now, let's talk about bills of ladings, and more specifically about electronic bills of ladings. Every year, our ocean carriers issue around 45 million paper bills of ladings. The majority, as said, is still paper. In fact, in 2022, only about 2% of the bills of ladings issued, and that's including way bills, in the container trade were actually in a digital format. In the dry bulk sector, it looks a little bit better, with 4 of the world's largest mining companies already carrying around 20% of their iron ore cargoes on electronic and digital bills of ladings. The end-to-end digitalization of trade documentation can cut costs, making international trade a lot more efficient, secure, and sustainable. Efficiency can really help cut the emissions. The Digital Container Shipping Association estimates a saving of about $4 billion if we get a 50% adoption rate of electronic bills of ladings. Going back to our friends at McKinsey, they did a study estimating that if bills of lading achieve 100% adoptability within the container sector, we could unlock a potential of $30 to $40 billion in global trade growth by reducing trade friction. And that has been one of the themes today also, is how do we make sure trade moves a lot more diligently and at a lower cost. So what is an electronic bill of lading? Well, an electronic bill of lading is not just a simple digital copy of a current paper bill of lading. An electronic bill of lading is a combination of a legal framework supported by statutory laws, not contractual laws. It's a technology to replicate the same 3 functions of a bill of lading, which is the receipt of the cargo, it is evidence of the contract of carriage, outlining the terms, and then it is the title to the cargo. Whoever holds an original bill of lading is the owner of the cargo. The ironic part about this is that before a bill of lading, a paper bill of lading is actually issued, it's already a digital copy on our computers. The advantages of electronic bills of ladings are manifold. First, there's the speed aspect. Electronic bills of ladings can be transferred very quickly, even when it's passing through lots of hands and organization. This means that an electronic bill of lading can actually be in a discharge port when the ship arrives, eliminating the need for letter of indemnities and reducing the associated cost and risk with letter of indemnities. The administration cost is also dramatically lower than a paper-based administration cost. No need for paper, saves trees, it's good for the environment, and no need for courier companies, DHL, UPS, having to carry these paper bills across the globe. lowers the carbon footprint. Errors are easy and quick to correct, which saves time, cost, and definitely a lot of frustration. And fraud. It is much harder to replicate or fake a e-bill of lading because of the protective measures that are in place, like e-signatures, PIN numbers, and elaborate audit trails. Paper fraud is truly on the rise at big risk in global trade. Barriers of entry to issuing a paper bill of lading currently is basically only a $50 printer and scanner and literally a potato stamp, and you can make your own bill of lading on paper. This stands in stark contrast to the digital bill of lading, where the barrier of entry requires cryptographic abilities, not just for the document, but you actually also need to be able to knock the entire digital system and infrastructure that is supporting the electronic bills of lading. In reality, an e-bill of lading platform becomes a community of risk mitigation agents where you have multiple people looking at the information at any given time. It really becomes scaled risk mitigation. So what challenges do we have for the adoption of this? Well, we talked about interoperability in the earlier presentations this morning, and there is still a lack of interoperability across the digital bill of lading platforms. Currently, we have 10 platforms, and they are all operating on their own digital environment. We can kind of draw a parallel to the way that we are communicating these days in Teams and Teams. You have to commit to one communication platform in order to communicate. You cannot make a Teams call to a Zoom, and that's the same thing that's going on here. These 10 digital platforms that support electronic bills of lading, you have to commit to one, and the entire trade needs to be done on that. The second challenge we have is the jurisdictions needs to adopt the electronic bill of lading as a title to cargo as a legal document. We also know in this respect, including Latin America, that there's numerous jurisdictions that are using the bill of lading as a way to nationalize cargo for custom purposes, even though this was never intended for an original bill of lading. The good news is the technology is there and it is proven. We have open global standards for electronic bills of lading with structured data sets supporting this interoperability. And just earlier this year, we actually released our first digital matrix to support issuing of the bill of lading. The legal models for electronic transfers are in place with the banks, and we also are seeing the adoption of statutory legal standards. Most recently, UK, England adopted it. And last but not least importantly, the P&I clubs, our insurance companies, are behind the uncompromised insurance coverage that is still intact. So what's the hold-up? Well, this is the chicken and the egg situation. We need demand in order to drive support within industry across all stakeholders and the supply. At BIMCO, we are strong advocates for focusing on these solutions and initiatives. We believe our industry must not fall into the trap of focusing exclusively on the development and the availability of the new zero-emission fuels and the new engines of the future to drive the decarbonization. At BIMCO, we've launched a 25 by 25 pledge, where our aim is to accelerate the uptake of electronic bills of lading 25% by 2025. But we're not alone on that. We have just a few weeks ago launched the Declaration of Electronic Bills of Lading with our partners in the FIT Alliance, the Future International Trade Alliance, with the aim to secure commitment from all stakeholders in international trade to collaborate on driving digitalization within our industry. And we are working with our owner members as well as the International Chamber of Commerce, which currently represents more than 40 million businesses globally. And I'm excited to say that includes chambers of commerce here in Latin America as well too. And we are inviting more to join. The year 2023 will not be looked at as a year that changed everything, but it ought to be the year where our industry realized the urgency of not only sustaining the unprecedented advancement of digitalization seen during the pandemic, but realized the urgency of fueling even stronger uptake in digital solutions. The pandemic might be behind us, but the urgency of making the right decisions, advanced digitalization within our industry and beyond, and cutting our carbon footprint in the process is ahead of us. The potential is simply too big to miss. And with that, thank you very much, Gracias, for your patience and your time.
Thank you, Thomas. Vamos a empezar una discusión ahora, si quieren. We're going to be speaking in English so Thomas can understand. So I will give you opportunity to the audience. I don't know if anybody has a question to the speakers. If not, I have some. Don't worry. Okay. So thank you, everybody. We saw different point of views. Interesting, each of them unique. So people, technology, investors, building, core community systems. So I guess the final goal is for us to be able to create a world system so everybody's integrated and trying to be more efficient. So, but the question is, in your opinion, each of us, what's the way to go? Should we start from the inside to the outside, or from the outside to the inside? What will be the best way to implement this in order to achieve the final goal? I don't know, anybody want to start? First,
Thank you. I mean, the IDB's perspective is that we let the country drive the demand. I mean, of course, we have a lot of knowledge that we've developed. We provide technical assistance. But at the end of the day, it's really being led from the ground up, from the country level, rather than in a way being imposed from above. That's not to say that there shouldn't be overarching frameworks, that there shouldn't be goals that are set, whether it's 25 by 25. But I think from our perspective, usually we let it grow from the ground up, from national, and then interconnect as needed, as what is needed to drive business, to drive trade. And so that would be my perspective from the IDB side.
So, for our industry, nothing changes without regulations, and regulation needs to be in place. We should not be sitting around though and waiting, and we are seeing industry moving ahead pretty fast and driven by demand. I think that learning lessons that came out of the pandemic is that we work a lot better together when we work as a global community in this industry here. And again, the supply chain presentation staff highlighted that as well too. We should not go back into our echo chambers in our companies thinking that we can sit and solve this ourselves. This is systemic changes, and while it can be scary, we are all in the same boat here, and we just need to make sure that we all row together on it. It is beautiful to see that we're not just talking single maritime window in a context of a particular port, but it's the interoperability between the ports. I think there's lessons to be learned from other industries, including the airline industry, where we see the level of transparency that they are providing and how they're able to get benefits out of that, both interoperability and the transparency.
Yeah, there are a lot of things happening in the industry, in the market around. But if I need to say something will change, is the focus. Because again, if you look at the PCS, for example, National Single Windows, American Single Windows, a lot of time what we see is more focused from the technical point of view, not related with the government size, and also change management and the inclusion of another stakeholders. The major difficulties are in the other side, it's not in the technology. That's my point of view, one recommendation or comment that I can say. Review the focus and to put together a clear plan and path in order to take in consideration this other aspect, not only the software itself of the technology.
Yeah, my opinion is we need to really have focus in the private sector, because sometimes, as Mr. Lucet is saying, sometimes the governments are really hard to communicate with them, and also because the investment in infrastructure sometimes is rather difficult. There is no APIs, there's no way to connect with them. So the private sector involves those startups that I already mentioned, because those companies are running faster. They are already connected with, they are doing their own services. I mean APIs with artificial intelligence, data. And we need to work together and try to find out a way to connect, because this is a collaboration, private sector, public sector. And it was interesting to me. Look, the good example of Europe, right? The example of Europe, that they actually share information, share data, but in Latin America, sometimes it's hard, because first you are thinking that your data could be vulnerable, it's enough secure, and that's, I understood your point about talking about cybersecurity. So we have data, yeah, but who's in charge? Who's the guard behind my data if I want to share it? So I think that we have a lot of barriers. And introducing cybersecurity, I will hear about your service product.
In my opinion, I think global best practices and guidelines and organizational requirements are important for driving us forward, but it's also important to bridge gaps that can exist between what global best practices are saying and connect them to things that are actually applicable to core communities. Not every port is the port of other people. And so we need to understand how we can internally adapt and develop things that are relevant to the way our ports have always operated as years.
Yes, so in Latin America, there's some other tasks to do first. That's what I asked, because in Latin America, several ports, we don't have anything in digital like we don't have, as you're mentioning. So we have that task first. You need to create a digital information in order to be able to use it. So that's why I'm asking, should we start from there, or should we start with creating guidelines to do that? So that's trying out the chicken, right?
I think green corridors is a brilliant example of how ports should not be sitting and doing this by themselves. There's actually a good commercial viable reason to collaborate with other ports and create these green corridors and these collaborations. And this is not just around technology, this is also around new fuel types. And we should not forget ports still compete with each other, right? So this is a first opportunity here as well too. Especially considering the heavy energy infrastructure that investment that needs to be made.
Also, the information you have to speak the same language, right? In order to do that PCS. Because if you have somebody speaking Chinese, German, Spanish, you won't be able to understand. So you have to bring something in a unique language. So then we're going to start communicating. So I don't know how to do that. And then, like you said, we have to get along and see how we're going to do that, what language we're going to use. Maybe we can still use our languages, but in the platform we can use one that will translate. Anybody has questions or wants to say any comments?
Yeah. Only a comment about the data, the information, like the quality. I remember a conversation with the manager of the rest of the people. Speaking about that, they were looking for to have a dashboard like based on business intelligence and this type of thing with the major KPIs there. And he told me, oh, the data that we have I don't trust it. Wait, Maria. And I asked him, and how you are managing your business? Is what data, which information are you using in order to take your daily-based decision on medium term and long term? The same data. This cannot be excused. The quality of the data and the availability of the data in order to go ahead with these topics. This is another way. It's a support on terms of visibility, because when you have a better visibility of your data information, you can change and you can improve your quality. You can start doing other things that perhaps you didn't know but you suspect.
Maybe you want to mention anything about artificial intelligence that you mentioned your...
Yeah, but I think that this artificial intelligence is a step forward. Because, I think the most important thing and its valuable asset is data. And I think we need to cover all the profiles, all the professional profiles. People who really understand data, numbers, and trust in that numbers. So in that profiles, maybe universities. So I don't know, but artificial intelligence, we have a shortage of people who understand big data and so on in Latin America. So we need to work together with universities and also all the institutes related with the technology, with the technology. So in that way, we could provide those professionals working towards those interesting topics. I mean, to be a better industry, in my opinion.
Anybody else? So, Krista, please.
I just wanted to add that I think at the end of the day, if something is worth paying for, that brings value to the private sector, they'll pay for it. If you have, the trade single window in Chile has never been obligatory. Its use has never been obligatory, unlike other countries where you have to use it. And it took a while, but now you have almost, I think, 90% of exporters, importers are using the trade single window because there's a value to the private sector. And that's the same with the port community system, and it's the same with, establishing the maritime single window. If it makes sense for your business, you're going to advocate for it, and governments are going to implement it, and, you have a win-win situation. So I think that we're getting to this point where value is being developed, and we're seeing a lot more advocacy coming from the private sector and pushing governments, pushing port authorities, pushing ministries of trade and customs to really modernize and to digitalize their processes.
Thank you. So, last question. Oh, there's a question?
So historically, we have not had common data sets. And the IMO now is working through at least maritime data sets and get them all uniform. So we're dealing, again, an ETA means an ETA, rubbing angle means rubbing angle, so we all draw the same language. The other aspect of it is, and I think this is probably, might be a little philosophical, but not really. Many carriers and owners out there felt that they've had the secret, still feel that they have the secret sauce. Again, their software platform is better than the next one. They have the best ships, right? And when it comes down to it, a ship is just a square box of steel. It's done. It is how you use it that makes the difference. It is not what color the hull is. It is how you use it, how your stakeholder map is looking, what are your vendor networks, and so forth. Right? That's what makes the difference. And I think we got a bit of a leadership paradigm shift in the industry right now. The guys that got us here are not going to be the ones that are going to bring us to the future. There's no doubt about that. They don't have the courage to do it. So, looking ahead, it is going to be a lot more of how we are actually utilizing the data, how we're utilizing our assets, our people, our network, as well to create this competitive differentiator. And it is not just the commercial side, it is certainly also for the authorities, it's for governments out there as well too. I'll go back to what I mentioned before. It is scary to do this, walk this journey yourself alone. It's a lot better to do it with someone to share this risking the decisions. So that's where collaborations are coming in. That's why they are becoming so very important. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention also is we should not forget that digitalization can become an equalizer. So while we might feel that Northern Europe might be steps ahead of maybe our part of the world, using technology can actually expedite our journey and equalize the competition, so to speak, if we embrace it. And it is interesting to see how some countries in Africa actually have embraced this and have the most sophisticated payment systems today. We are seeing how big Singapore is leveraging their technology to the third world also to help them escalate. While I'm from Denmark, my own country where I grew up is looking at single maritime through an Excel spreadsheet. Right? That's the reality of it. So technology can become an equalizer if it's embraced.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Only comment?
Yes.
Yeah, related to small questions. It's not a technical issue. It's a more political and strategic decision. We were in a project. We had a lot of no from the technical people saying that we cannot do. We spoke with the member of the board of the company about that, and the member of the board said, "You are wrong. We could do that." And in 24 hours, the technical people arrived to us saying, "Hey, we have 3 or 4 different options to share data with the UPCAs or whatever we're speaking about." It's not a technical issue, it's a voluntary strategic decision, political decision to go ahead.
Thank you very much, everybody. Please step out of the line.